Hello. It is 4 a.m. On a mild winter morning here in Los Angeles, and I'm inspired to share with you a working hypothesis, a rough model of interpersonal communication that I've been just present to in the course of the many conversations that I've had the opportunity to to have with people in the last week in the United States. Um, so one of the things that is unmistakable and unmissable, and this is the starting point of our conversation, about most communication in the US, whether it's interpersonal communication, whether it's public communication, whether it's when you go to into restaurants, the sort of the organizing principle of some kind is that every piece of communication, every single piece of communication marries high assertiveness, which is the style axis, and high clarity, which is the substance axis, right? Of course, it is entirely possible to conflate style for substance. We'll come to that in just a bit, but just for there to be clarity in our conversation, imagine there's an x-axis and there's y-axis, and we're going to plot assertiveness and we're going to plot clarity, right? And then if you make a 2x2 matrix from there, we have 4 different options, right? So we have high assertiveness and high clarity, which is really the strong zeitgeist in a country like the US, right? The conversational, it's almost hygiene to a point where if you are coming from a different culture, it may even come across as being very aggressive sometimes. And yet, what you notice if you're able to just stay with the discomfort is that the place from where it is coming is to be able to get you what you want in the quickest, simplest, most efficient kind of way. Of course, there are exceptions to the rule, so take these ramblings with a pinch of salt at one level, and yet I find it useful to kind of have a mental model, and therefore I'm sharing this with all of us. So, the second of the 4 possible combinations is one where you have low assertiveness and high clarity. And the third is where you have high assertiveness and low clarity. Now, in workplaces and interpersonal relationships, you will find that option 2 and option 3 are often confused for the other, which is to say that when you have to exert some kind of influence, or when you're trying to nudge people into doing something, you may notice that you can continue to operate at low assertiveness whilst being able to offer a high amount of clarity. And that will get people to move in directions where they still feel that they have a voice, because you're not shutting out everything, or you're not shutting out the opportunity to have a dialogue. But where you have high assertiveness and low clarity, which is something that you notice more than just occasionally in a lot of workplace kind of conversations, where or even parent-child kind of conversations, where there's a tendency to say things with authority, but it does not necessarily mean that things are the conversation or the communication is designed in a way where the person who is at the receiving end of it knows exactly what needs to be done, right? That's one part of the story. The other part of the story is, or the other nuance, is that depending on the context, depending on the culture, you can pin your own style. Like, this is something that took a long time for me to learn, because my natural style was that, or my natural inclination or aspiration even, was to communicate with people in a way that is um, that is rooted in a fundamental sense of fairness and equality. And it took a while for me to learn that even while you can root your communication in a sense of fairness and equality, it does not mean that you can communicate in the same way with everyone in same across contexts. Which is to say that all of us have different buttons, and you see this in team sports a lot, right? How you would deal with Sehwag is very different from how you would deal with the Tendulkar. So as a coach or as a captain, you need to have different styles to be able to have more than a working relationship with them. So some people have a greater need to be seen, for instance, and other people are a bit more stoic and they want to be left to themselves, etc., etc., etc. The Pakistan cricket team is a great example of it. Shoaib Akhtar, for instance, was um, could have been managed in a very, very different way. But that's just an example from the left field. And where I'd like to pause this conversation is by extending an invitation that the next time you're out wanting to have a conversation, whether it is in a relationship at home, whether it is at work, whether it's in a social relationship, whether it's in a friendship, if you can look at the person in front of you and see which combination would suit that context, that relationship, and this person the best, which is this person someone who would like to be communicated at a level where there can be high assertiveness and high clarity? Is this where you can have they'd like not to be told things, but perhaps have a more two-way dialogue? And the critical thing is to understand that there's a use case for both. For the longest time, I thought that everything needs to be a conversation. Everything needs to kind of have back and forth. Everything needs to um, um, at all times bear in mind that the other person, the assumption was the other person, just because I was not enjoying being told to do things, I just assumed that nobody else enjoys being told to do things, which now I realize is not the case. So anyway, I'm going to take a pause. This is already a bit long. I hope you enjoyed it, if you lasted the distance. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are as you tune in. All right, signing off. Still jet lagged. Yeah. Bye.